The Apostle John, in his first letter, he writes, if we claim we don't have any sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. But if we confess our sin, he is faithful and just and will cleanse us from everything we've done wrong. If we've claimed we've never sinned, we make him a liar and his word is not in us. My little children, I'm writing these things to you so that you don't sin. But if you do sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous. He is God's way of dealing with our sins, not only ours, but the sins of the whole world. I hope you're doing well. I'm Jeff Miller, the pastor at the Belton First United Methodist Church, and in August we've been looking at some words out of 1 John, the first chapter, and now we got into a little bit of the second chapter. But three things we've looked at. Fellowship, the fellowship that we have with God, with Jesus Christ, and with each other. And we spent a couple of weeks talking about how God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. And John has this flow in the letter. It goes from fellowship to God is light. And if we say we live in the light but still do darkness, we're lying. And if we say we have no sin, we're lying. But if we will confess our sin, and so there's this progression. Now, John says some serious stuff about sin in these words. But that sin and the darkness, I think those go together in my mind. Hey, do you remember the dynamic duo? Do you remember good old Batman and Robin? Batman and Robin and their trusty Batmobile that they had. The fighters against darkness, the villains and the darkness and these great crime fighters, the dynamic duo to fight that. And but sometimes as I watch the episodes, interesting, sometimes the villains try to tempt them to join them. Especially Catwoman. Catwoman was always trying to really seduce Batman to coming over to her side and be a villain. And it had to do with, he couldn't be tempted to do that if there wasn't some of that desire in him. So he couldn't say that he never had the desire maybe to do that. That would be denied. Just as John says, if we say we don't have any sin or we've never sinned, we're lying. I remember sitting in church, and this was a long time ago. It was in a different faith expression, where they did testimonies, and the testimonies really were so meaningful. Hearing those testimonies is part of the inspiration for me making a commitment to Christ, because I wanted to see God active in my life as they did. But I remember this one, and it wasn't so positive in that way, because a lady stood up and said, I was saved 42 years ago and I haven't sinned since. And I thought, wow, that's kind of a denial that we sin. Sometimes it's just hard to admit, isn't it, that we do wrong. Sometimes it's just hard to admit that we do wrong. But if you perhaps think that you don't sin, no, we can have our moments, can't we? We can go for 5 minutes without sinning. We might even go a half hour, maybe an hour. But then something will happen. We'll go home or go to work. You know how it is. But that Greek word for sin, the Greek word is harmatia, and it really means, harm. So think about it. Let me put the word harm in there. If we claim we don't harm anyone ever, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. But if we confess our harms, God is faithful and will forgive us the harm that we've done and cleanse us from everything we've done wrong. If we've claimed we've never done any harm, we make him a liar and his word is not in us. My little children, I'm writing these things to you so that you don't cause harm. But if you do cause harm, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous one. He is God's way of dealing with the harms that we do. Not only harms, but the harm that is done in the whole world. One of the first rules of Methodism is do no harm. We can't deny that we have, but if we do, we have an advocate with the Father. A little bit more about that on Thursday. But the goal is so that we won't do any harm. We won't intentionally do harm. Because if we deny that we've done any harm, God can't forgive us of that harm. I hope that maybe you'll take a moment or two, reflect on perhaps some of the harm that you maybe have participated in or caused, and ask God to forgive you and remove that harm and cleanse you and know that you truly are forgiven from that. God bless.